Okay, so today I'm meeting up with Faith and our friend Lauren, who's also an ALT, and we are gonna head down to the mall. There is a Toho Cinemas movie theater there, and so thought I would take you guys with us today. We're gonna watch the Beetlejuice sequel, Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, I think is what it's called. Pretty excited, so let's go. Yeah, for the record, we've never gotten our hands on a poster for the movie we want to see.
That's because I think these are future movies. Well, I want to say they're future movies. Whoa, they have the same cast?
たくさんの事件を捜査してきたが、事件が起こると家族は
Freebies, we love
お
freebies.
母さん、まだ天国へ行けてないね。
Ghost with the ghost. 実はさっき見てました。今日。はい。
グレープソーダの香りに近いですね。いいかも。
All right, so it's the next day. I've sat with this movie just a little bit. I made some notes last night, and I kind of just want to talk through my thoughts about the movie. But before I do that, I wanted to make a note of something real quick. This is something that I did not notice last night, but um, before you saw that we got handed posters as we were like walking into the theater. The front of it is the actual movie poster, you know, with the whole gang. But the back of it, as you can see, the cast is different. And I did a little bit of Google searching last night and found an article talking about it. These guys are the Japanese dub actors for Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. That's kind of a fun little detail, I guess. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, but it did make me think about another little kind of, I would say, detail about just going to the movies in Japan in general that I didn't really get to showcase or like talk about in the little vlog that I did. In terms of like your general movie going audience here in Japan, they all really gravitate towards the dubbed version of stuff. Seeing this poster and everything, it kind of just made me think about this culture of like everybody here just wanting to go see the dubbed versions of stuff and how that kind of is juxtaposed to what I would say is more common like in the States, because for the most part, not everybody of course, but like for the most part, I feel like when we watch foreign made films or TV shows or whatever, we don't watch dubbed versions of those things. There's really two reasons why I prefer watching something with subtitles. It's more of a mechanical thing because, you know, when you're dubbing over something, the dialogue is never going to perfectly match up with like your mouth movement. You know, it's just inevitable. Like that's not going to happen. It's two different languages, right? To me, that's just kind of distracting. I don't really like watching that if I can help it. And then the other reason is if I'm watching like a French film, for instance, it's a French story with French characters set in a French speaking country. I feel like I would rather take in the story in the original language that it was meant to be, you know? Like if I'm watching a movie set in Paris, like I want to watch it being performed in French. It feels a lot more authentic to me that way. So it's just really interesting to me that it's so different in Japan because yeah, if a movie like Beetlejuice Beetlejuice is coming out, you know, you're going to have a couple screens that show it in the like Japanese dubbed over version, and you're going to have maybe one screen that shows the subtitled version. And let me tell you, the subtitled version, those theaters they're not empty, but there's like so few people in there. You probably saw a little bit from the clips that I was able to film last night. It was me and my friends, and I would say maybe like 7 other people. I don't really know exactly why that is. What I'm assuming it is the voice acting culture is really strong here. Like it's a very, very strong industry. they are a huge part of sort of celebrity culture here. Like voice actors are really, really popular here. They always do these events for different like anime and stuff where they'll have the voice actors come do these live events and live readings and all this kind of stuff. Like they themselves are extremely popular. I guess maybe that is part of the reason why. Yeah, it's just that sort of difference between movie going culture here versus like the States is just really interesting to me. So I wanted to mention that. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's move on to talk about Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. I didn't mention this earlier in the video, but Beetlejuice, the original, is, I would say, probably my favorite Tim Burton film of all time. This sequel, I was really excited about. I was really speculative as well. These sort of legacy sequels really can go very far either way in terms of quality. After I heard some early reviews coming in and people seemed to be liking it, made me feel a little bit more at ease. As a longtime Beetlejuice fan, what did I think of the movie? I really liked it. I haven't really dug Tim Burton films, like too many of them that have come out in like recent years. But that's not even like that's not a hot take by any means. Like, there's so many people who feel the same way about Tim Burton and him making a lot of like CGI nightmares. His movies already have kind of like darker color palettes. And so when you add on just this like nothing but like green screen and weird CGI, I don't know. It leads his films very much into an area of the uncanny valley that I don't like. And I mean, his movies are supposed to be kind of like weird and whimsical and stuff, but I don't know, like his designs, I don't think they look as good in CGI. Like I think his sort of art style and his tendency to towards what he makes in terms of effects and characters and stuff, I think it looks better when it's more practical. Going into this, I was just like, please just give me something. Just give me a little bit of the old Tim Burton. And to me, I think that that's what this movie was. So I am going to go through first the stuff that I liked and then some stuff that I didn't like so much. The first little part of this maybe will be spoiler free, and then I'll warn you before I like say anything that's actually spoilery if you haven't seen the movie yet. First, stuff I liked. I loved the practical effects in this film. A lot of great practical effects, like in the characters themselves, and of course the sets. I also I have to talk about the sets because they're so much fun. I love just the whole sort of aesthetic of the Netherworld is so iconic, is it not? I like seeing more of the Netherworld. You know, I was kind of wondering like what kind of lore from the original movie would get built on here, and so just honestly, I liked seeing more of it. I liked the weird like dry cleaner set that they made in one of the scenes. It was just like off kilter. It was just kind of a cool set piece. I of course like how they opened once again on a sort of tracking shot of the model. That was a great little touch. Just in like overall, it was fun. I loved Delia's art exhibit, like in like towards the beginning of the film. The next thing that I have on here that I really liked was the costumes. There is this one outfit in particular that Delia wears. I think it's again towards the beginning of the movie, but it's right after we see Jenna Ortega's character for the first time, like when she's at her school, and Delia is wearing this amazing black and white coat. It's really long. It's got this geometric pattern to it. Amazing. I was obsessed. That might have been my favorite outfit in the movie. Everything that Winona Ryder was wearing, it's just like, yeah, you know, I can see Lydia grown up wearing those kinds of things. I liked Jenna Ortega's fits too. Like they're really fun. Her outfit that she wears in, this is a little bit of a spoiler, in a funeral scene, again towards the beginning of the movie, she has this like kind of sweater dress that's like overlay, like there's some cool layering going on with this like sweater dress that she's wearing. I really liked it. Okay, so the next thing that I had was just Catherine O'Hara, just phenomenal, and I absolutely loved her portrayal of Delia in this movie. I thought it was such a natural progression for her character. She has this like presence, this energy that she has on screen that it makes, like, when I see her playing this character, it makes me think she is probably really easy to work with. Because it's probably just so easy to like get into your character, at least in the context of this movie. She just is Delia in a way that like nobody else could be Delia. So needs, and then of course, I mean, I feel like this just completely goes without saying, but Michael Keaton, he just like did not disappoint. It is kind of unbelievable in a way because it's been 35 years or 36 years, I don't math well, since he played the character last, and felt like no time at all had passed. Like it was actually crazy to see the same sort of like chaotic energy, but just more of it, because he is in this movie more than he is in the first one. So I have a few more things in this like stuff I liked list, but this could be more spoilery. So like if you haven't seen the movie yet and you don't really want to know anything else about it, you're probably gonna want to skip these things. So in like the spoilery section, the first thing I have is Danny DeVito. That was a really fun cameo, and it's like not surprising. Obviously, he's worked with Tim Burton several other times. I love this like sort of grim like janitor character in the netherworld that they had him play. I love the makeup, like the blue makeup, and the eye contacts were crazy that he had with that look. I love all of like the kind of smaller background characters and stuff that we see in the netherworld. They're all really good. One of my personal favorites was, it's in the waiting room area, and there's a lady that's sitting on the waiting room couch, and she was clearly eaten by her cats. I also have to mention the moment in the film that I think I laughed the hardest at. And this is like a big spoiler because what's his name? uh Lydia's dad, Charles. Yeah, Lydia's dad, Charles. So he has died. And so that's why they end up going back to the house, because they're arranging the funeral for Charles. We do see his funeral on screen. At his funeral, there is a children's choir that is singing a choral arrangement of Deo. I'm kind of obsessed. Like, I'm sure there's probably some people who went to see the movie and were like, ugh, rolling their eyes, like, okay, that's too much fan service. Personally, I loved it. And it really, like, that was probably the hardest I laughed in the movie. Okay, so something else, and this is very much spoilery, but something else that I actually enjoyed is the twist with one of the plots of this movie with Jenna Ortega's character. I keep saying Jenna Ortega's character. I think her name is Astrid. Yeah, Lydia's daughter, Astrid. There's this subplot with her character where she meets this boy who is like about her age. They kind of hit it off. He invites her over on Halloween night to hang out. And basically, you get this revelation that Astrid can actually, like, she's sort of inherited her mother's abilities to see ghosts and stuff. And we get this reveal, like, once she comes to this boy's house, that he is actually dead, as he tells her that he'll take her to see her father in the afterlife. And he swindles her into signing this not signing a contract, doing some sort of incantation or something, and swindles her into swapping lives with him. She unknowingly grants him her life, so he gets to come back to the real world, and like he's sort of doomed Astrid into going into the netherworld. I actually liked it. Now, I'll be honest, there are so many people who have probably watched this movie and have been like, yep, I called it. I called it right away. I knew he was dead. I knew he was dead from the first time we saw his face. Me, I don't like to try to guess twists in movies. I I can't wait to see kind of like what more people say about this and if they thought it was like a really lame twist or not. But for me, I thought it was really fun because they give you clues as to what is actually going on, but they are obvious, but then again, they do make sense. Like you do get the feeling that something weird is going on, but again, for me, I wasn't sitting there going, "Oh, what does it mean? What does it mean?" There's a moment where she goes into his bedroom and she's like looking at his stuff, and she finds a copy of the handbook for the recently deceased. Like if you're really like tuned in and trying to guess everything, you could probably obviously guess the twist at that point, but again, it's set up in a way that does make sense because he tells her, I got it at a yard sale. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, maybe they eventually went through Adam and Barbara's stuff and they did put it in a yard sale. Like it's something that could make sense, but then when the reveal happens, oh yeah, of course he would have a copy of that book because he's dead as well. Okay, and the last thing that I wanted to mention is the sort of musical callbacks in this movie. I thought the one that was sort of the best callback to the original movie is the musical scene towards at the very end of the movie. So at the very end, the scene in the church with a certain wedding about to take place. There's a musical scene. Beetlejuice is doing his shenanigans, and there's like a part where Catherine O'Hara's character and Jenna Ortega's character. Why do I keep saying that? Delia and Astrid they sort of get possessed by Beetlejuice to kind of lip sync and dance along to the music. And it's really, I thought it was really funny. I didn't love everything about that scene. I'll talk about it in a second. And I thought like both Catherine O'Hara and Jenna Ortega, I thought they were really funny. Like they're sort of their body movements and stuff in that scene I thought was really funny. And I also liked kind of that element of that musical scene because I thought it was a nice callback to the original Deo scene from the first movie without being too, like, feeling like too much of a copy. Okay, so now I am going to talk about some stuff I didn't like so much because I don't think this movie was perfect by any means. And I think I would still say the original is still my favorite, even though there was a lot of stuff in this one I liked. But the first thing I want to say is Lydia in this movie, her characterization. It didn't totally make sense to me. So Lydia's whole thing in this story is that she, is the host of this very popular, successful ghost hunting show. Her thing is that she was married to this one guy, and that is her daughter Astrid's father. Basically, it suggested that Lydia never really dealt with that death very well, and that she sort of became just like an absent mother um, to Astrid because Astrid was really, really close with her dad. You find out Astrid is extremely embarrassed about Lydia. Like, she's very embarrassed that her mom tells everyone that she can see ghosts and interact with them and stuff. Yeah, Lydia's just being this sort of absent mom that won't discuss anything with her daughter. And I just don't know how I feel about that because to me, it doesn't really make sense that that's Lydia's character arc because that's the exact same thing that she dealt with as a kid in the first movie. Because when Lydia was a teenager, that's like the exact same situation she's going through. Like, she lost her mom, and her dad is being really absent and neglectful about it and won't really talk to her. And on top of that, Charles has remarried Delia, and just like she and Lydia do not get along at all. And also that's the other part of Lydia's plot is that she is in a romantic relationship with Justin Theroux's character Rory, and I don't know, that's something else that was weird to me because it's like, would Lydia really be the kind of person that would find herself exactly in the exact same situation as her father? It seems weird that she would allow herself to become exactly what she hated so much. I like it felt a little bit off that Lydia would be like such a neglectful mom like that and that she would be getting married to a guy like Rory. Because that's essentially like Lydia getting married to what Otho was in the first movie. And it seems so odd. I just didn't fully buy it. I really liked Winona Ryder and Jenna Ortega together. I thought they did have a really solid mother-daughter dynamic. I just wonder, like, was there not a better way to create conflict between these two characters. I mean, you already had the existing conflict of like Jenna Ortega, Astrid, Astrid being like embarrassed of her mom's career. Could we not have stuck with just that as the conflict? And I know I just said that I liked Jenna Ortega and Winona Ryder when they were on screen together, but I didn't think Jenna Ortega was like super strong on her own. There's just some more emotional moments that her character is supposed to experience that I just don't think she carried very well. The main one coming to my mind is, you know, her character for the whole movie is saying like ghosts aren't real. You know, stop listening to my mom. Stop listening to her going on and on about these ghosts and Beetlejuice and the netherworld and all this kind of stuff. Like that stuff's not real. She doesn't believe in it at all. She's like literally says like I believe in science or something at one point. Doesn't believe in any of it. And then after the revelation with the boy and he kind of tells her like, "Oh, you know, help me do this and we'll go find your dad in the netherworld." And he does the whole thing in his bedroom where he draws the door and it opens to another world. And you would think her reaction would be like, "I'm sorry? What?" Like maybe even a little bit of screaming. like like something going on. She's a woman of science. Like a door is filled with green smoke is literally opening into the netherworld and her reaction's just like not much. I was like, I don't know if that was like on her or on Tim Burton in that scene or a combination of both, but like I think they should have worked that again. I thought Jenna Ortega did like honestly a really good job as Wednesday. This character was maybe Wednesday coded, but not Wednesday. She's supposed to be a normal person. I think some emotional moments should have, you know, been played a bit better, but I have to talk about this because this is probably one of the most blatant issues with this movie, but there are many, many plots. It's just not totally necessary, I don't think. I think some stuff should have been condensed, and some stuff we should have gotten a little bit more of. What you think is going to be the main part of the plot is the introduction of Beetlejuice's ex-wife. There's this plot where she's going after Beetlejuice because she was some like weird cult member in life and she like sucks the souls of netherworld residents. She's just like this kind of raging lady that is like trying to find Beetlejuice. She's trying to track him down. I thought that that was just going to be sort of the main plot, but it's not really the main plot of the movie because there's that going on, and then in the context of that is when we get introduced, like reintroduced to Beetlejuice and then introduced to Willem Dafoe's character. But then there's the plot of going back to Connecticut, like in the living world, going back to Connecticut. You also get introduced to the subplot of Astrid meeting the boy. And then in the midst of all that, we just get some more extended scenes of like Rory and Delia just being there, just like scenes of their characters, just kind of their characters doing their own thing. I felt like it wasn't super focused. There's certain scenes, like I said, of Rory and Delia where they're just like I said, kind of doing their own thing. I think that could have been cut down some of their screen time, and I hate to say that because, like I just said, I love Catherine O'Hara and I really like Justin Theroux as well, but we don't have the runtime. This movie doesn't have the runtime to like dedicate to all of these parts, and I think if something's going to be cut down, like some of their scenes where they're just kind of doing their own thing could have been cut down a little bit. Oh, there's also a part Delia dies. Like this is like 2/3 of the way through the movie, I think, but she's going into the afterlife and she's trying to find Charles, and she, you know, she's like, this isn't justified, I shouldn't be dead, and you know, like all this kind of stuff. And thinking about it, I don't know really exactly what that added to the story. It was just some extra bits that I don't think really needed to be there. It took time away from other things I was a little bit more interested in. Nobody really mourns her because at the very end she ends up finding Charles and just goes off in another world, you know. Lydia and Astrid aren't even that sad. They clearly, like, none of them are really close at all. Astrid and Lydia had their problems, but also Lydia is still not like super close to Delia. And so yeah, there's not a lot of grieving that goes on there. It's say that they'll miss her, but like there's not really even a single tear shed over Delia like dying in this movie. And I don't really know what it did for her character, to be honest. Now, I can think longer and harder about this, and you know, maybe I'll change my opinion, but I like she's just so absorbed in her art world in real life. So like I guess it sucks that she's dead, so she can't do that anymore, but there's nothing about her character really that killing her off added to in any way. Adam and Barbara in the first movie, they kind of grow as characters in the afterlife, after they've passed away. It's like they go through a character arc, but Delia doesn't really. So to me, it was just kind of a waste of time. I really just I wanted more time with the Beetlejuice and his ex-wife plot going on. Definitely feels like an afterthought. And I was just so interested. We get like one flashback scene of Beetlejuice and this woman, like what they were up to in life. They don't really share the screen together at all because she's kind of hunting for him the whole time and he's trying to like avoid her the whole time. At the very end of the movie, she eventually finds him. They don't exchange like any dialogue, I'm pretty sure. As a viewer, I just didn't really feel like I totally understood their dynamic, except on like a very basic level. I like when characters interact with each other, if they have some kind of history like that and it's any part of the plot at all, I would rather like see them talking together. Wish they could have reworked some of the stuff here. And I mentioned before about like the musical scenes in the film and the one towards the very end. The last musical scene does take place during like the final showdown scene of the movie, where everyone sort of like all the characters sort of converge like in this one scene at this church. And there's this last musical scene that happens. Even though I really like Catherine O'Hara and Jenna Ortega in that scene, it does definitely go on for too long. So I gotta point that out. I don't know why they did not cut that down shorter, but the song that they're playing in that scene, they play basically the entire song. And it felt like it dragged on for just too much. They actually repeat a couple shots in that scene, and it felt kind of weird because it's like, just cut it shorter. I don't understand why they did that. But yeah, I don't know. I do have some extra thoughts. These aren't really things that I necessarily liked or disliked. These are just extra thoughts that I had about this movie. One is, was that a Dune reference? Was that specifically supposed to be a Dune reference in this movie? Of course, we have the iconic sandworms that are from the original, but I'm trying to think if they even get referred to as sandworms in that first movie. They make a return in this film, as they would, they're very iconic. And there's one scene where a sandworm is about to show up and they zoom in. They have a shot where they zoom in on the sand and it has this like sort of rippling effect, like almost like dimple ripple that is identical to the effect they use in the sand in the Dune films when a sandworm is on its way. I don't think that was a coincidence. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to talk about, this is something that I was really wondering about going into the sequel. Would Beetlejuice the musical, would it have any effect on this movie in any way at all? So I've mentioned before, I'm a huge Beetlejuice fan, and I also happen to be a big fan of the musical. I'm not a huge musical theater person. I like some musicals, but it's not my go-to. But Beetlejuice the musical is one that I actually really love a lot. I listened to the whole album. I think it's really fun. I've watched a lot of behind the scenes stuff about that musical, conversations with the cast, all that kind of stuff. This might be kind of controversial to say. I actually don't know. There are some changes in the Beetlejuice musical that I actually thought were kind of better than certain things in the movie. Being a big fan of that musical, I did wonder if there would be any element of it that would sort of make its way into this sequel or not. After seeing the movie, I don't really think that they did too much, and I don't have like a problem with that at all. I think it's fine. With the original movie and the musical, like I said, there's some changes and there's some differences, and I do think that Michael Keaton's sort of original take on that character, it's still very different than Alex Brightman, who originally played Beetlejuice on Broadway. His version of Beetlejuice is kind of different from Michael Keaton's version of the character. I like both of them, honestly. In the Broadway musical, Beetlejuice, well, of course, a big difference in the musical is that Beetlejuice is on stage a lot. They sort of gave him dual roles in the musical because not only is he acting as like his character Beetlejuice in the story, but they also made him the narrator. They gave him a sort of like Deadpool-esque quality where he can break the fourth wall a lot. And it's was a really good choice in my opinion with that character on Broadway because it gives him a lot of opportunity to be able to interact directly with the audience. It just gave him a lot more opportunities for characterization, and through that sort of Deadpool-esque quality, his humor was a bit more Deadpool-esque in terms of being very self-aware, like self-aware jokes about millennials. When I just say it out loud, it sounds kind of lame and it sounds like it wouldn't be funny, but in my opinion, it's pretty funny, the stuff they do with the Broadway show. But yeah, that element, I would say Beetlejuice made like a couple of jokes here and there in the movie that seems like something maybe Alex Brightman would have said on stage, but it's really not too much. He still just very much feels like his original version, and that's totally fine. I still think it worked really well here. Delia in this movie, she really feels almost identical to the way Delia is played in the Broadway musical. Feels totally natural for her character. Now in 2024, she is very much this sort of like new age spiritualist. That is very much the way the character is portrayed in the Broadway musical. One element from the musical that I think could have benefited this movie was what they did with Lydia and Beetlejuice's relationship in the musical. Basically, they make Lydia sort of the main character because I would say in the original movie, Adam and Barbara really are our sort of main characters. You know, they're our POV characters. They're the ones we're sort of learning everything about. In the musical, they kind of changed it to Lydia. Makes sense. I mean, they were really trying to market Beetlejuice, to a younger audience, to an audience who maybe had never seen the original, especially since it was an adaptation of the first movie, not really a sequel. No complaints, honestly, because the musical does give her a lot more character. There's like a lot more going on between, I say a lot more, maybe not a lot more, but there's more going on between like Lydia and Beetlejuice as characters. In the movie, they don't have too much interaction or any like meaningful interaction really, because the first time that Lydia sees Beetlejuice in the movie is when she's looking for Adam and Barbara in the attic. She sees Beetlejuice in the model, and he sees, ooh, another living person that can see me. Let me try to convince this person to set me free. And so that's what happens. They have their little charade scene. Then when she needs to save Adam and Barbara later, she realizes Beetlejuice is the only person that can help her. So she has to call on him. And then like the wedding shenanigans happen, and then of course like they defeat Beetlejuice. In the musical, I think their relationship is more interesting because in the scene where they interact for the first time, it takes place on the roof of the house, and Beetlejuice just gets finished singing a song about how he's so lonely, like nobody can see him, and he's the weird little ghoul man that nobody likes, and he's a song about being invisible. And then Lydia, because she writes a suicide note, she comes up on the roof and she sort of reads it out loud, and she's lamenting also about seeming invisible and like how her mom was the only one that could really see her, and how she feels so distant from her dad and she feels like invisible to all the adults around her and that sort of thing. And in that moment, it's kind of fun because Beetlejuice almost like becomes sort of kindred spirits with her. Like he realizes that he kind of relates to her. And he's still a bad dude when he sort of realizes that she can see him and stuff. He does go into the part of the plot where he's trying to convince her to set him free. And this time around, I think what's interesting is there is a little part of Beetlejuice that kind of likes Lydia genuinely. And you see that later in the musical. I think it's a bit better in the movie because he plays on her emotions with her dad. And basically he's like, oh, so you don't like your dad. Oh, so you kind of want revenge on your dad, huh? Well, guess what? I'm your guy, kind of starts trying to persuade her to set him free because he can help her like get revenge on her dad. And that's kind of the play that he takes. But like from that song forward, it just makes the relationship more interesting, and it adds a bit more of a dynamic to it because like Lydia also kind of learns a little bit more about him, and she kind of also sees herself in him just like a tiny bit. The reason why I think that this movie would have benefited a little bit more from something like that is because like you get the moment at the beginning of this movie where you realize that Lydia is sort of being haunted by Beetlejuice and his sort of presence and stuff. But I don't feel like they really do enough with that. The first time that they interact in the movie is crazy. It's the crazy scene with like the weird goblin baby Beetlejuice and stuff. And I don't know, there's just not a lot of there's not a lot of words really exchanged between the two of them, and then they're gone again. And then the next time they interact is like when Lydia once again comes to Beetlejuice needing something, and this time it's to save Astrid from the netherworld. Have this fun little like moment in the movie where they're breaking into the netherworld together, and it's a fun scene, but you don't really have any real conversation. Their whole kind of final scene together is like the wedding scene, and it's all the music, like it's all the musical part of the scene, and they're just doing like this kind of dance together, but again, like not really talking. So I don't know, it's like I know that they were trying to preserve the kind of aspect of Beetlejuice as a character where he's just this sort of harbinger of chaos. I can appreciate wanting to keep that aspect of Beetlejuice as a character, and so maybe that's why they didn't want him to like talk too much about like their situation or their feelings or whatever. But he mentioned something about like a psychic having some sort of psychic connection or something with Lydia, and I'm like, I don't know, I just want these characters to talk. I wanted a Beetlejuice to have more interactions with his ex-wife character. I wanted to have more insight from the characters themselves about their relationship, and I wanted more of that between he and Lydia. There just wasn't much of it. So if you've never listened to Beetlejuice the musical soundtrack or seen the show or anything, if you like the Beetlejuice movies, I would definitely give the soundtrack a listen. It's honestly, it's a lot of fun. That's about it. I think overall I had a really good time with it. I think I spent more time on the stuff I didn't like so much, but it brought what I wanted the most out of a Beetlejuice movie, which is just to have fun. I was talking to Faith and Lauren after the movie was over because Lauren she'd never seen Beetlejuice before. She watched it for the first time the day before. Faith had also not seen it in like years and years, so she rewatched it right before as well. And so I was talking to them about it, and even though they weren't like a huge fan of the original movie, I kind of understand. It's a weird movie. They both just thought it was a lot of fun. Like straight up, like they're just like that was just a fun time. I think that says a lot about this movie, and I'm glad it's doing really well at the box office. And that's about all I have, I think, to say about it. Thanks for watching. This is my first time to like really talk about movies, but I want to do more kind of movie stuff on this channel if I can. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, give it a like, and subscribe if you're not. And yeah, see you guys in the next one. Bye. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice.